everybody, it's Angel from Halo Inspirations. We give you inspirations to help you spread beauty and joy through your quilting journey. Happy hump day. Whoop whoop. Happy Wednesday to each and every one of you. You know, sometimes it's just a lot of fun to just quilt a little bit at a time, right? And it's always good practice to sit down and just quilt for about 10-15 minutes. Well, if you just quilted individual blocks, you could do that, but then we'd have to put them together. Well, this is a different method that I have come out here and done a short video for you to show you this interesting, fun, easier method, I think, than the one I've shown before, just to get all those blocks put together. So the quilt as you go can be a lot of fun. Now, I will tell you, when you do quilt as you go, you get to make choices. What? Yeah, choices. So you can do individual blocks. You could actually sew a whole bunch of blocks together, and maybe a strip of them, maybe 3 blocks. You sew them together, and then you quilt the row, right? And then just put the rows together, right? There are so many different ways to do this. And it just makes things, I am not going to lie to you, when you got a tiny throat like I do, little 6.5-inch throat, it does make it more manageable. And I'll be real with you, it's kind of fun. So I've already used some older blocks that I've had. Just did some easy quilting straight lines. I've never done straight lines besides the 101. So I already got all those blocks done. So now I'm just showing you how I'm putting them together. So let's go ahead and get this started this week. I'll see you at the cutting table in just a sec. Okay, first part is first. I will tell you my blocks are 12.5 inches. Okay, so what I've done is I've cut, I'm only having 6 blocks, so I cut 6 13.5. I made it just an inch bigger, and I did that with the backing and the batting. So I've cut 6 13.5 inch of backing and batting each, okay? And then I'm just simply going to make quilt sandwiches of all 6, okay? So I'm using a spray base just to make it easy. So if you've noticed, I've laid this so it is right side facing the table, okay? And then more threads. Gotta love thread. I put my 13.5-inch batting right on top, and I'm going to try to make them pretty, as close to perfect as possible, lined up. But we're going to be cutting them down, so I'm not overly stressed. And even when I cut them, I didn't overly stress on perfection because I'm going to cut them. I just needed them about an inch bigger. You can cut them bigger if you so desire. You can cut just so as they're a little bit bigger to make it easier for you to quilt, okay? And then I just take that, obviously I have flipped it so that my backing is on top, and I'm taking the backing fabric and I'm folding it up about halfway, and I'm going to use some 505 spray, and I'm just going to simply spray base. Well, I got some on the table, so I have to get that cleaned up. And I'm going to go ahead and just simply smooth it nice and flat. Now, the nice thing about this, if I didn't like what I did, or if I had a pucker, you can just pull it back and start over. Okay. I'll get that in a second. I just don't want to put anything on it. Now remember, I'm not worried too much about perfection because I'm going to cut them down. Now, and obviously I do not have directional fabric, which in some ways makes it nice. And I'm just spraying on the batting and just smoothing it out. There we go. So that's the first part. Now I'm flipping it over, so now the batting's on the top. And I'm going to put my quilt block, and I'm going to try and just guesstimate a center. It doesn't, like I said, we're going to cut them down, so I don't have to be too perfect. I'm just trying to give myself a little extra room all the way around. So it's nicer if you have a little bit more, because then when you get, if you happen to have to stitch something that's close to the edge, then you have something to grab onto. But I'm just doing some straight lines, so we're all within the seams. I'm using the seam as a guide. So then I'm going to do the exact same thing, guys. So I fold it halfway up, and I'm going to just spray around. Get rid of that thread. This thread too. Gotta love the threads. And I'm just going to simply press them down nice and flat. Turn this around, and when you pull this up, it will stop where there isn't any spray. Now this one I didn't get quite straight, so I'm going to get underneath first. Okay. And then press it down nice and flat. And then all I'm going to do is simply, I'm just doing straight lines. I haven't done straight lines except for my 101 quilt that I used to teach with. That's the only time I've ever really done straight lines. And I decided I was going to make this easy on myself. So I'm just going to straight line quilt. Now the thread that I did choose is blending very nicely inside my backing and my sashing. But we will talk more about that. So I'm going to go get this quilted, and then what happens is then we cut them all down. So I have one here that I did straight line quilting, okay, nothing crazy, and I'm going to cut this particular block down, okay. So let me grab my ruler. All right. Now I noticed on some of my blocks that they shrunk a bit with the quilting, and I'm really okay with that. And I'll show you an example of it. But what I'm doing is I'm basically lining up the 12.5-inch line on the side as best as possible. And then I look at top and bottom. And this one got a little bit wonkified itself. But because we have points, I do try to get it within a 1/4 inch of it. If it doesn't go quite perfect, I'm okay with that, really. So just try to get it all straight, looking at the different lines, trying to get it going. And then I'm just basically going to cut it down to 12.5 inches. Okay. Oh, see, I'm going to go out a little bit. Actually, I'm going to flip this around, and the reason is because it did go a little wonkified, and I want these to be in the 1/4 inch if possible, and these two. And now these blocks were made several years ago, and so I don't have the perfection or the skill level, not perfect, nobody's perfect, that I had today. I can tell that, and that's okay. We're going to make this work. Now see, if you'll notice, this is a little off, so I'll figure it out when I go to sew on the sashing. Just want to make sure everything looks pretty straight. And yep, okay, and then I will cut 2 sides. So there's one, and then 2 sides. Once those 2 sides are done, I'm going to flip it over, and now I have 2 straight lines to use for my 12.5. There we go. Perfect. Love it. Okay. And then I'll cut the other 2 sides. And I will do this with all 4 of the block, or all 4 sides of all the 6 blocks, okay? So get all this out. Here's one. Now here's one of my Wonkifieds. Now you'll see that it shrunk a little, and that's fine. This is not enough. It's going to go inside the seam. So it's okay as long as they're all 12.5 inches. There's another. This one I didn't do straight lines. I changed my mind. This was the first one I quilted. And last but not least, this one. So I've got these all done. Let me go ahead off camera, get this quilted, get it trimmed down, and then we'll go to the next step. So I'll see you in just a sec. One of the things I wanted to mention was the quilting part of it. One of the really cool things about doing Quilt As You Go is that you can quilt each block different, okay? This one I just mostly, except for this one, I did just straight lines. And the one really cool thing is I did use Dream 80/20, and if you'll notice, whatever batting you use, take a gander. It should tell you on the packaging how closely you can stitch or how far apart. So with Quilter's Dream 80/20, it's 8 inches. Well, I only did these on this block, but these are 4-inch blocks, so I'm good, right? Because I could quilt up to 8 inches. That means I could have just quilted over here for 8 inches and not done these, okay? I don't normally think about it because I don't normally do straight lines or something that isn't, I usually quilt more. That's what I'm trying to say. But it worked out because I had up to 8 inches, so it really didn't matter. The one place I thought about adding, since I did this one different, this is 12.5 inches long. So I thought about, you know, quilting just some diagonal lines in here just to fill it up. This is a table runner. It's mine. I'm back and forth. So we'll see what I end up doing with that. But it's more than 8 inches is in here. Okay. So what happens if you don't follow the packaging for your quilting? Have you ever bought a comforter from somewhere and you wash it, you use it, you wash it, you use it, and then the batting inside, like, it'll sink all the way down to the bottom of the quilt or the comforter? Up here, up on top, there's none. Up on bottom, it's really bunchy and bulky. That's called migrating, and that's what will happen if you don't follow your packaging on your batting. So it's real important when you do choose whatever kind of quilting you're deciding to do that you follow how far apart so you don't have that batting later in time migrating. So if I don't do anything in here, I have a strong possibility that this may migrate somewhere. Okay, so it's real important that you follow those directions. Okay, just wanted to point that out. But every block can be quilted different in a quilt as you go method. The other thing that's really cool is that you could use different backing material for every single block. So whenever you flip the quilt over or whatever you're making, you will have a secondary quilt of different blocks, you know, because they'll all be different. And I just thought that would be really cool, and something else you can do with Quilt As You Go, because you are quilting each block at a time. Now, as far as the sashing goes, I went ahead and picked the same color as, or the same print, the same fabric I'm using for my sashing. I'm also using it with the backing, right? Well, one of the advantages for me, the reason I did this is because I found a thread that blends on both. Okay, because they're both the same, I can use this in the bobbin and in the top, okay, of my sewing machine. If I had a different color on each back, I would highly encourage you to load a bobbin for the color of the fabric on the back, especially when we go to join these things, and you'll see why. But just in the bobbin, whatever you use on the back, I'd put in the bobbin. Okay, so Mine happens to be both. Made it easy. Didn't want to think a whole bunch. So found this thread. If you're wondering, it's 2024 of Aurifil, and super loved it. I know one of my BFF quilty friends is going to love it because I'm quilting with white. She loves quilting with white. So at any rate, what I have done here is I have cut 1-inch strips by 12.5 because my blocks are 12.5, and then I cut 2-inch strips of by 12.5 because no matter what, this block size will never change. So what I did with the 2-inch blocks is I actually pressed them in half, so it gave me a 1-inch strip in the end. Okay, 2-inch pressed in half, 1-inch by width of the block. Now I don't have very many here, and I'm going to explain why before we actually put these on. This is my quilt, guys. So if your quilt has more blocks, you're going to be able to do the same method, but what you have to pay attention to is which gets sashing. So I'm going to bind these 4 edges. So I don't want to put sashing out there. I'm actually going to bind with the same fabric as the sashing and the backing. Just my choice. There's no right or wrong. So I need to have sashing here, 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 and here. And then when I join the 2 rows together, which we'll do too. Okay? So this is all I need. If I had more blocks, I would need to cut more sashing. All right, and we only add it to 1 at a time. So let's go ahead and do the bottom row here first, just because it's closer. Okay. All right, so I just need sashing here, and I just need sashing here. So the 1-inch strips, guys, all right, go on the bottom. Okay, and I only want to do one side of the block. Okay, because we're going to join them together with the same strip. So I only needed 2 for the bottom row. So I have my 1-inch strip, and I'm going to put it right sides up. Okay, and I'm going to line it right on my block. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it because I do know now which side I'm doing. Okay. It really becomes important if your blocks are directional. Mine are flippy floppy except for 1 or 2. So then we take the, whoop, that's a 1-inch strip. Then we take a 2-inch that we have folded, and with the raw edges, we're going to put them on the top. Okay. With the raw edges of the block. So the fold is coming towards the quilt. So we have all 3 layers, and this is a good time if you haven't already, because I quilted with a walking foot because there were so many layers. It's a good time to use your walking foot because there are a lot of layers here. And I do have larger pins because I am going through a lot more layers. So I'm just going to pin all of these layers together, and I'm going to get them where they're nice and pretty, and they're going to be lined up. And remember, the right side of the 1-inch strip on the back is facing up, and then the raw edge of the 2-inch that is pressed is facing the outside of the block. Raw edges to raw edges. And I will honestly, I won't do this on camera because I will drive you crazy, but I will put several pins in, and I will do a 1/4-inch seam. Okay, and I'll just stitch a 1/4-inch seam along here, and that'll give me both. And I, just because there's so many layers and I don't want anything to get cattywampus, I'm going to go ahead and back stitch at the beginning and back stitch at the end. It's not something I'm used to, so it'll be fun for me to try to remember, because when I'm piecing I usually don't back stitch a whole bunch, but I just want to make sure they stay anchored. And oh, there it is. I was going to say I lost a pin. It's gone. Okay, so I'll do probably one here, and then I'll send this through. So that was this one, and I know this is my center, so I will do the same thing with this block. Okay, so the sashing fabric that goes on the back will be the 1-inch strip facing right side up. You'll put it on top. Okay, and then the 2-inch strip that was folded, again, it's 12.5 inches because that's what my block is. I'm going to line that up and pin it, and those are the only things. So I'll do the same thing with the top row. Okay. Oh, see, I had it in a certain way and I already messed it up. Okay, so I'll do on this one and I'll do on this one, but not over here. Okay, so just these two. So I only had to cut, that's not straight, I only had to cut 1, 2, 3, 4 1-inch strips by 12.5, and 1, 2, 3, 4 2-inch strips by 12.5, and then press those together. And then after I get those done, we'll go to the next step. So I'll see you in just a sec. We got all kinds of stuff going on over here. We're having a little fun. This is a lot of fun. Once you have all of your strips attached, what I like to do is then take this to the ironing board and press it. Okay, because it allows it to sit a little better, I feel. Okay, and much easier to manipulate. So I'll get that done. This one is done like that. So as you see, we're going to attach these to the next block. And again, I'm using my longer ones. You're going to see why in here just a sec. Nice, strong. Thank you, Grace. These are the quilting needles. I love them because they have flat heads, but I use them to hold my backing to my frame when I'm long arming, and so they are nice and strong. And with that flat head, it just makes it lay nice and flat. So I am using those. We do carry them in the shop if you're so inclined for this method. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 1-inch strip after I've pressed it, and I want to attach the next block. Okay, so I'm just going to put them nicely together just to get it started, and then I know this is what I need to pin. Now you will see that there's enough room for you to stitch. Now I'm using my walking foot, so it kind of helps, but to get it really going, getting it started, what I prefer to do is get my pin in there, and I'm going to come out pretty close to the seam below it. Okay, and when I come out, it pushes that seam back for me. Okay, I'm going to do that to the other side. Now I will tell you, I am not afraid to pin a lot in here, and because I'll show you here in just a second, watch it not do it, but see, well, that doesn't look straight, does it? Okay, now I don't want to pin a whole bunch on camera here because I will drive y'all crazy. It's still not straight. Good grief. This is the part I will drive y'all crazy with, is unpinning, repinning, unpinning, repinning. Okay, because I want it to be nice and straight. I'm going to do one more in the middle with you, and I wonder if it'll do it. Not too bad on this one. So what I have found is sometimes this gets a little, the top will come down a little bit. So I'm not afraid to pin as much as I need to so that they all will just stay where they need to be as I'm stitching. And as I go along here, I pull the pins as I go. But I'll get all of that pinned, and I again am trying to remember to back stitch before and after, and it's a 1/4 inch seam. So when you're done with that, this one I have done for you. So I have it sewn on, looks very nice. And you could see if this was a different color than the backing, you would have an outline of your block. Now what's really cool is, and I've tried different sizes and I realize, you know, how important that 1 inch is. What happens is these two seams of these two blocks, they don't overlap. They lay right next to each other very nicely. And so that is filling up the area of the sashing for you. So you don't have to put any kind of batting in there and worry about not having enough filler. This is the perfect size. Now with this, what the next step is that you will fold this over. Oh boy, we're going to need to cut that before I do this. Okay. Either that or keep them hidden in there, right? So we're going to fold this over, and basically you're just going to top stitch next to it. And because we kept the fold on this side, we've got nothing to worry about being raw edge. Super love that. Now if you see, if I stitched this down, it was probably be bigger just a smidge than the backing. So that's why it's important to match this backing. But I'm going to tell you something, guys. Because of this point, I'm actually going to glue baste, and you could do this anyway, glue baste this down right where I want it. And it won't be perfect because my skill level wasn't on as nice that it is now, but I wanted to try and keep the integrity of the points as best as possible. And so I can glue baste this down before I stitch. That's actually what I did with this one, so that I could keep my points as best as possible. Now if I would have really paid attention, I think I would have had this perfect right on the line. But you're not going to see that much because the thread matches. And so it worked out perfect to get my stitching, or my front part here, covered with this piece. And I'll probably do the same thing. Now if I didn't have points and I'm not worried, kind of like, you know, probably this one, I'll just go right over and top stitch down next to the edge. Makes it very simple and easy to do. So you'll want to get, this is my bottom row, so I will get this one attached, right? And then I'll get this one attached, and then we'll go to the next step. So let me get this one stitched down and this row put together, and then we're going to go to the next step. So I'll see you guys in just a sec. So now that I have the rows together, now I want to join the rows. I always get like, what am I supposed to say here? You know, I want to say, now that we have the rows together, we want to put the rows together, but that doesn't make any sense. So now that we have the rows together, we want to join them. Now I only have 2 rows, but there is some things that I want to share with you. So again, we want to cut a 1-inch strip and a 2-inch strip, and then press it in half. Okay, so I have pressed this in half. Now remember I told you that the size of the block won't change. So with this method, so it's 12 and a half, 12 and a half, 12 and a half. That will equal 37 and a half. And just to show y'all, I just want to pull out this tape measure. Well, let's try and do something straightish, right? And if you look, I'm 37 and a half. So I'm still, each block is still 12 and a half inches. It hasn't changed the size of the quilt, which is another nice thing, because you know how big it's going to be. You just multiply how many blocks you have and by the size, and you will know exactly how big this quilt's going to finish, or whatever you're manipulating. So because I know it's 37.5, I can cut my 1 inch by 37.5 and my 2 inch by 37.5, and I know that I'm going to be correct. Now I still check my block sizes in case I did something wonky, because if I've done something, then they won't come out the way they're supposed to. But understand, it would have been an operator error and not the method. And I also want to remind you to make sure that you actually do cut a 1 inch strip. So I cut this one first, and as you see, it's not 1 inch. This was not a 1 inch strip when I cut it. I cut it wrong. So I recut another one and cut it down to 37.5. And then we're going to do the exact same thing that we did when we put the blocks together. And we're going to take the bottom strip, and it's going to be right side facing up. We're going to line it up with our block here, with our row, and we're going to pin it. And I won't bore you with that on camera. Oh my gosh. And then then we're going to take our 2 inch strip and we're going to put it on top, and right sides, there's the only thing that's exposed is the right side. Raw edge with raw edge. Okay, so the fold is coming towards the block, and then we will pin that down, and then we will stitch once again a 1/4 inch seam all the way down. There's one extra step. So after I get this done, I'm going to show you that one extra thing, and then we will have a completed, well, for me, it'll be a completed tabletop or a table runner or whatever we want to call this. It will be completed without the binding. So let me get this done, and I'll be right back at you in just a sec. So now I have my 2 strips attached, and the 1 inch strip was on the back, and I went ahead and pressed it so it's easier to manipulate. So now we want to put the rows together, join those rows together. So again, we will have our nifty little pins, okay? And I want to make sure that I get the correct direction. I don't want it to be upside down. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab them both, okay, and then flip them over. And here's that extra step I was speaking of. I'm going to line them up pretty well. When I go to pin, I'm going to pin at the joins first and then work my way out. And when you do this, of course you want it to be nice and straight, but you want to fold this back a bit, and you want to try and line up those seam lines just a bit. Now you may have to finagle with this because whenever you go to pin it, it may not be right. But then I'm going to pin on the left, just like we did. Take a little peek. So far it looks okay. Okay, and then I'm going to pin on the right. And of course I could pin down the middle, that's fine too. But I'm going to pull it back, and I'm just going to take a peek. And I am looking pretty darn straight. So then I'll go to the next one. And then, like I said, I will pin going out. I'll go one more in the middle, and then I'll work my way out. On the right. Now I'm not pulling that back that well, but that's okay. My walking foot tends to do very well with it. Help me keep everything out. There we go. There we are. So we can definitely, oh, I didn't go left and right. That's fun. I went down the middle of that one, but that's okay. So this one's left and right. And you know, you can pull it back and take a gander how things are going to be lining up. And mine do look pretty darn straight. You can pull it back even further. You can do whatever you want to try and make them look like they're going to be straight. And then from this point forward, you can go ahead and pin the rest. One thing about pinning that you want to make sure is that you're not flipping any of your fabrics. All right, so I'm going to get this rest of this pinned. I'll get it stitched. I will tell you, glue basting, when you're ready to fold this over, glue basting worked amazing. So I'll probably just come back and show you just how little it takes. And then of course we'll go from there. But look guys, this is it. This is the last one. I wanted to make sure to talk about trying to keep these straight so that one's not way over here and it goes like this. I mean, you don't have to be necessarily perfect because you do have some of the sashing in between, but you don't want them so far off that it's very visually wrong, right? Because that'll drive you crazy. It'll drive anybody crazy, I think. At any rate, I'm going to go ahead and get these pinned. I'm going to stitch that 1/4 inch again. That is a second to last stitch that we'll do before we have a completed top, but I'll see you guys in just a second. Okay, she's all stitched on, and notice again how nicely, I've been cleaning some of these up, how nicely that seam just lays nice and flat in there. Just love it. Now I did tell you I do love me some glue basting. It helps a lot. So because that way I don't have to guess if I'm holding it straight, I can actually just glue base it down and then just stitch. So what I like to do is just give myself a little bit of glue, and I am using Roxanne's. I'm kind of a glue snob. You don't need to do this. Elmer's washable school glue is much cheaper, although this stuff just works amazing. But the Elmer's washable school glue is got a pH of neutral, which is what you want when you put it on fabric, because anything acidic or basic will break down those fabrics. This is also neutral. It's also temporary, and it's just what I love. And I love the applicator on top of it. So I'm just going to give myself a nice little line around that stitch line, because that's about close to where I'm going to go, and I just need something to hold it down. Nice even little stitcheroo. Whoop, I'm getting underneath. That's not a problem. Now you'll see that's my block that got wonkified. Is that a word? I don't know. It is today. It's out of Angel's Dictionary. Now I'm going to take this to this pressing mat, and I'm going to press it down, because glue is wet, it won't stick. Okay, so and when I do this, I'm just trying to look for straightness. I will tell you, I probably should have added this to the top. It really doesn't matter, but then this seam would have been on the top and the new seam would have been on the bottom. It's totally your preference. I don't really care one way or the other. However, if it does matter to you, then I would encourage the other to do it from the top and add the bottom to it. So I'm going to go get this pressed real quick. Okay, so notice that by pressing, I'm drying the glue faster, and so it will hold it there for me, and I don't have to sit here and hold it while the glue is drying, because, oh my, who has time for that? I did notice something. I never stitched these two. And I elected not to add anything in here, so you know I'm going to have to be very careful with my quilt top. And my stitch, these are pretty straight. This one's a little cattywampus, but I actually... Oh, there's a thread. I actually think it was me sewing a little bit crooked, and not that it's not, but it's close enough. These are pretty darn good, I think. Let me look in the camera. That looks pretty good. So if I didn't think something was straight and I really wanted to get a little bit better, this is temporary, so you can pull it back, and if you need to, you can add more glue, or you can just see if it'll stick all by itself. Or, you know, repress and see if there was still enough glue there at the time. But I'm telling you, the glue basting helped a metric ton. It keeps it where it needs to be. So now all I have to do is do a top stitch closer to the edge, and this will be a almost done quilt, because we still need the binding. The binding makes it finished. what does the back look like? Here we are. Super love it. Super cute. And again, man, can you imagine if each one of these were a different backing? How fun would that be? A lot of fun, not even kidding, because then you would have kind of a reversible type quilt going for you. But if you were doing a king size, you could see how quilting every block and then just merging them would be a lot easier than trying to quilt the whole thing. So Quilt As You Go is, well, first of all, it's fun, but it's just, it makes things a lot more manageable. So let me get this done, and I will see you guys face to face in just a sec. So wasn't that fun? And this is the project, right? And it's already bound. So I want to tell you, I spent probably a couple hours doing the straight line. Oh, it wasn't even that long. It wasn't very long to do the quilting. And then without the video, I could have done this whole thing in a day, right? I could have cut the strips. I could have, well, I did cut the strips. Cut the strips, get them on there, get them attached, get the blocks together, get it all sewn, get it bound. I could literally do, I mean, this was only 2, 4, 6 blocks. Literally, that whole thing took less than a day. It took a day even with video. So it's not, in my opinion, this is not just fast and fun. Putting the Quilt As You Go together, it was actually very enjoyable. But what I find even more fun was just, like, I can see in the future me doing some free motion quilting, even practicing. I mean, you could have just a quilt sandwich and cut it down to whatever size you want them all to be, but just do some practice run, and then each block would be your growth chart, right? We do temperature quilts. Why can't we do instead of a temperature of each day, it's our quilting, and we could see through time how we have evolved. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm liking that idea, because it's always good to sit and practice a little. So I just found that so much fun, and making this particular method, it just made it so much more enjoyable. So I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm always here. And as you all know, I will be here at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Why? Because we're in Virginia. For our live Q&A, live quilting and answers, I'll be here with Mayhem tomorrow. No, today. We'll be here today. I'm sorry. Today at 3 p.m. here at Hump Day. So I will see you guys later. And until next time, may you all continue to be inspired, productive, ever so joyful. Never stop believing, and never stop making your dreams in quilting come true. Love y'all. Happy quilting. Happy Hump Day. Whoop, whoop. I'll see you all soon.